Every 4 years, a sporting event brings the planet to a standstill and unites 5 continents under a single voice. The World Cup is the only moment when humanity, in all its diversity and conflict, looks at the same point, driven by the same hope or the same agony. In the last edition in Qatar, around 5 billion people, more than half of the entire population of the Earth, watched the games, holding their breath at the very same millisecond. All around the world, millions of fans transformed their cities into a carnival of colors, chants, and flags, cheering their countries on in the race for the most coveted trophy on the planet. At the center of all that unity stands one organization that controls everything: FIFA. 4 letters that today bring together more nations than the United Nations itself. While the UN counts 193 member states, FIFA has 211 affiliated associations. An organization that presents itself as non-profit, that claims to protect the good of the game, that preaches fair play, equality, and fraternity among peoples. But there is a question nobody asks out loud during the celebration. Who watches the watchman? What happens when the very organization that should protect football is the greatest threat it faces? Today, the hidden face of FIFA, the empire built on bribes, blood, and impunity that governs the most beloved sport on the planet. The dream of an idealist and the seeds of power. The most powerful sports organization on the planet before becoming a billion-dollar empire was born from the dream of a passionate young man. On May 21, 1904, French journalist Robert Guérin summoned representatives from 7 European nations to a historic meeting: Belgium, Denmark, France, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland, united by one goal: independence from the British monopoly of the Football Association. That day they founded FIFA. The idea was simple and beautiful: take football out of the hands of a few and give it to everyone. England was not even present. The British rejected FIFA, seeing its founders as mere enthusiasts with no real power. The World Cup only came to life in 1930, under Frenchman Jules Rimet. For decades, FIFA operated in an almost amateur fashion, with a modest office and a handful of employees, driven more by passion than profit. The dream remained beautiful and genuine, but every dream has a turning point. And FIFA's arrived in 1974, in the form of a Brazilian man whose ambitions could not fit inside any modest office in the world. The Brazilian who bought the world. He had the instincts of a corporate shark and the vision of an imperial expansionist. João Havelange took over FIFA's presidency in 1974 and never let the sport be the same again. When asked if he was the most powerful man in the world, his answer was direct. He met with presidents, was received by kings, and had sat with the Pope. The power of football, he said, was the greatest power on earth. When Havelange first took over the Brazilian Sports Confederation, the press said he knew nothing about football. He agreed, but with a disarming twist. He did not go there to play or admire players. He went to manage, and by managing, he transformed everything. What he never mentioned was the price football would pay for that destiny. His strategy rested on 3 relentless pillars. Pillar 1: the expansion of borders. FIFA's golden rule: every country gets exactly 1 vote. The Maldives carries the same weight as Brazil. Samoa counts as much as Germany. Havelange understood this before anyone else. According to judicial documents and journalistic investigations, he would approach representatives of small federations in Africa and the Caribbean and offer money to build pitches, buy uniforms, and pay coaches, in return for just 1 vote. For those poor federations, the money was life-changing. For Havelange, it was pocket change. Over 24 years, he increased affiliated federations from 146 to 196 and expanded the World Cup from 16 to 32 teams, buying an army of political loyalty that kept him in power for more than 2 decades. Pillar 2: the marriage with the multinationals. FIFA sealed billion-dollar partnerships with Coca-Cola, Visa, and Adidas. Each of the 15 pitch-side sponsors paid around $150 million individually, generating gross revenue of $1.8 billion. The World Cup became the greatest commercial showcase humanity had ever seen. Pillar 3. The control of broadcasting rights. Havelange realized the world's most valuable product was not the stadium ticket, but the image of the game transmitted into billions of homes. When he arrived, a World Cup generated $78 million. When he left, it generated $4.6 billion. A growth that seemed like a miracle. But every miracle has a price, and that one was still waiting to be collected. The system that turned corruption into routine. To monopolize broadcasting rights, FIFA operated with a marketing company called ISL. In hotel corridors in Frankfurt, envelopes of cash were handed out to guarantee votes from National Association representatives. FIFA had stopped being a sports federation and had become a syndicate of bought votes. The first seismic shock came in 2001 with the collapse of ISL. Swiss courts found a trail of bribes leading directly to the president's office, implicating Havelange and the president of the CBF, Ricardo Teixeira. Names were kept under judicial seal for years through quietly negotiated financial agreements. The corpse of the old FIFA was already beginning to rot, and Havelange's successor had already learned every detail of the playbook. Joseph Blatter refined the system to industrial levels. FIFA began demanding billion-dollar tax exemptions, special tribunals, and changes to local laws in exchange for hosting events. And if you think this is ancient history, it is happening right now, here in the United States. To host the 2026 World Cup, states like Missouri, Georgia, and Florida passed new laws exempting FIFA from taxes on ticket sales. In Georgia alone, that means giving up $25 million in state revenue. Cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, and Glendale, Arizona refused the conditions and were eliminated. Those that remained signed contracts that, according to the International Sports Law Journal, function as one-sided agreements where FIFA modifies terms while cities bear all obligations. The American taxpayer foots the bill. FIFA keeps the profit. Blatter also created the Goal program. Millions were sent to underdeveloped federations, supposedly for infrastructure. In reality, the money vanished into shell companies and the personal accounts of regional bosses like Jack Warner. In return, they guaranteed the votes that made Blatter untouchable. The scheme seemed airtight, were it not for a man who loved his cats a little too much. The night the FBI came knocking. The FIFA empire seemed too big to fall. That certainty bred the arrogance that led to one fatal mistake: laundering money through the United States financial system. The downfall began with Chuck Blazer, the American FIFA representative, who rented a Trump Tower apartment for $6,000 a month, exclusively for his cats. Blazer forgot to pay his taxes. When the FBI cornered him, the choice was simple: prison or a hidden microphone in his keychain at FIFA meetings. He chose the microphone. The sledgehammer that brought down the walls of Zurich was the RICO Act, created in 1970 to dismantle the American mafia. It allows prosecutors to charge an entire organization, not just isolated individuals. If you are part of the structure that sustains the crime, you are responsible. By applying RICO to FIFA in 2015, the Department of Justice was not saying some officials were dishonest. It was saying the organization's leadership functioned in practice like a mob. On May 27, 2015, the FBI stormed the Bauer Aulach Hotel in Zurich. 7 senior officials were pulled from their beds. The FIFAgate scandal confirmed what many suspected. Nearly every World Cup host selection over previous decades had been bought. Ricardo Teixeira, Havelange's former son-in-law, and, according to American investigators, his direct heir in corrupt management, avoided arrest by being in Brazil, but was formally indicted by the FBI. Corruption finally had a face, an address, and an account number. But the worst chapter was not in the vaults. It was in the desert. The blood that cemented the desert stadiums. No host selection exposed FIFA's true nature more brutally than Qatar 2022. A country with no football tradition, no stadiums built, and temperatures reaching 122 degrees Fahrenheit in June. Infrastructure costs exceeded $220 billion, the most expensive World Cup in history by an astronomical margin. At least 6,500 lives. That was the price paid in blood, according to The Guardian. Qatar used the kafala system, a legal structure that bound migrant workers to employers, confiscating passports and preventing them from leaving the country. A modern form of slavery. Thousands of young men from Nepal, India, and Pakistan died under the scorching sun, in precarious housing, or falling from poorly secured scaffolding. No insurance, no compensation, not even official acknowledgement of the deaths. While FIFA officials toasted the success of the most expensive World Cup in history, families wept over wooden coffins quietly returning to poor villages across Asia. And while the world watched the games, another dictatorship was watching with great interest and already had its own plans. Sports washing, when football launders dictatorships. FIFA perfected one of the most effective geopolitical weapons of the 20th century, sports washing. The perfect laboratory was the 1978 World Cup in Argentina, where Videla's regime tortured opponents just blocks from the stadium, while football gave the world an impression of normality. Havelange's response when asked about human rights was, "Football does not deal with security or politics. That is the host country's problem." 44 years later, Qatar repeated the script at greater scale. Saudi Arabia, watching closely, learned the lesson. Under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the country deployed a sovereign wealth fund of nearly $1 trillion to buy international legitimacy, signing Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, and Benzema to salaries exceeding $200 million a year. In 2023, FIFA announced the 2034 World Cup host. Saudi Arabia was the only candidate. The process was engineered so suddenly, and with rules so restrictive, that competition was eliminated before it began. The politically correct playbook vanishes like a mirage in the desert when faced with a 9-figure check. And if you still believe FIFA Gate changed anything, what comes next will make you think twice. The crime that never ends. Michel Platini and Joseph Blatter went through a 6-year process and were both declared innocent. Gianni Infantino took over promising transparency and ethics, but you only need to look at the 2026 World Cup to see the playbook never changed. It just got a new cover. To get elected in 2016, Infantino went straight to Havelange's manual and raised the stakes, promising even more countries in the World Cup. In 2017, FIFA expanded from 32 to 48 teams. Cape Verde, an African archipelago of 600,000 people, plays its first World Cup. Curaçao, a Caribbean island of 150,000, smaller than many city neighborhoods, is there for the first time. Beautiful stories. But the Cape Verde delegate has one vote at FIFA. The Curaçao delegate has one vote at FIFA. The president of La Liga was direct. Infantino plays politics because to get elected, he promised more countries and wants to deliver. It was exactly what Havelange had done, buying votes with spots. The face changed. The method did not. And FIFA is already studying expanding to 66 teams by 2030. More countries, more votes, more power. The perfect cycle, and an endless one. The story of FIFA is the story of how institutions born from pure ideals can be corrupted from the inside out, brick by brick, vote by vote, envelope by envelope. It is the story of how the dream of a young French journalist in 1904, who only wanted to give football to the world, was hijacked by men who saw in the collective love of billions not a flame to be preserved, but a resource to be exploited without scruple and without consequence. Contracts keep being signed in the same luxury hotels, votes keep being bought with the same money, and envelopes keep changing hands, only now with more discretion and better lawyers. Perhaps the reality today is this: FIFA no longer serves football. It is football that serves FIFA. Now you know what happens behind the four most powerful letters in sport. If this story surprised you, wait until you see what comes next. It is already on your screen. Click and watch. See you there.